It's been 88 years since Amelia Earhart vanished somewhere over the Pacific. Every few years, someone claims to have found her. Most of those stories fade. Another photo, another theory, another maybe. But this time, something feels different. This November, armed with new satellite data and updated forensic clues, a research team will travel to the Pacific Ocean, to a remote coral atoll called Nikumaroro. They believe they may have finally found her plane, and after almost 90 years, could this be the final chapter of aviation's greatest mystery? By 1937, Amelia Earhart had one final goal: to circle the planet. But back in the 1930s, flying long distances wasn't routine. It was dangerous. Engines failed, radios cut out, and maps were more rough sketches than science. Every flight was a risk. Crossing an ocean wasn't a journey, it was a gamble. She chose the longest, most unforgiving line you can fly, around the equator. Her Lockheed Model 10E Electra was built specifically for it. Twin engines, reinforced wings, and fuel tanks that nearly doubled its range. Even so, it would push the limits of what aircraft could do. She wasn't flying alone. Her navigator, Fred Noonan, was one of the best, a former Pan Am mapmaker who had charted the first commercial routes across the Pacific. Together, they made an extraordinary team. On July 2, 1937, they took off from Lae, New Guinea, bound for Howland Island, a tiny strip of coral in the middle of the Pacific, their next refueling stop before Hawaii and home. But Howland was barely 2 miles long and almost invisible from the air. Even a few miles off course, they could have flown right past it. At 8:43 a.m., Earhart's final confirmed message came through. "We must be on you, but cannot see you. Gas is running low." And then, they were lost. The U.S. Navy launched what was then the largest search in its history. 9 ships, 66 aircraft, nearly 4,000 crew. They searched hundreds of thousands of square miles of open water. They found nothing, no wreckage, no oil slick, no trace. And as a new expedition prepares to return to the Pacific, one question lingers. After all this time, will we finally learn how her story ends? Nikumaroro Island sits about 400 miles southeast of Howland Island, isolated, hot, and rough underfoot. It's an uninhabited island. 3 years after her disappearance, a group of British surveyors landed on the empty coral island. While mapping the coastline, they found human bones, a woman's shoe, and a sheet of aluminum torn and weathered by the sea. They sent the items to Fiji for analysis, and at the time, doctors concluded the bones belonged to a man. Decades later, when researchers re-examined those measurements using modern methods, they found something different. The skeletal remains appeared to belong to a woman roughly Earhart's height. The bones themselves had been lost, but the change in conclusion reignited the mystery of Nikumaroro Island. For decades, attention turned elsewhere, to the open ocean. Logic said her plane must have crashed at sea. In 2019, explorer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, joined the search. With National Geographic, he swept the deep slopes around Nikumaroro, scanning down to nearly 4,000 meters. He found coral, sand, the remnants of old shipwrecks, but no sign of the Electra. Richard Gillespie, who has studied Earhart's disappearance for decades, wasn't surprised. "I never thought they'd find the plane down there," he said. "It's just not where the evidence points." And that raised a new question. If not down there, then where? Recently, the focus has shifted inland, into the island's lagoon. When researchers reviewed satellite imagery, they noticed a pale, reflective shape along the Taria Peninsula, near the channel known as Taman Passage, where tides flow from the open sea into the lagoon. That location makes sense, because if Earhart's plane had landed on the outer reef and later broken apart, that is exactly where the lighter sections would have drifted. The object measured roughly 20 meters long and 3 meters wide, almost the same as the fuselage and tail section of Earhart's Lockheed 10E Electra. It wasn't visible in older images, but after Cyclone Pam hit in 2015, one of the strongest storms ever recorded in the South Pacific, it suddenly appeared. The storm surge likely cleared away layers of coral sand, exposing something metallic just below the surface. Researchers call it the Taria object, named for the peninsula beside it. It's not in the deep, it's in the lagoon. Along the path, debris would have naturally followed. And it appeared only after a storm powerful enough to uncover buried metal. It all fits together, the geography, the timing, even the currents. And that was enough to draw Purdue's attention again. the same university that helped launch her final flight. Later this year, a joint team from Purdue University and the Archaeological Legacy Institute will travel to Nikumaroro to see the site for themselves. Their goal isn't recovery, not yet, but confirmation, to find out whether that shape beneath the lagoon is just coral, or something built by human hands. If it's metal, and if that metal can be matched to Earhart's Electra, it could close one of the longest-running mysteries in aviation history. And after all these years of false leads and dead ends, that possibility alone is enough to bring a team halfway across the Pacific, chasing what might be the final missing piece of Amelia Earhart's story. Over the years, 3 main theories have survived every investigation. The first, the one most people know, is the crash and sink theory. Earhart simply ran out of fuel near Howland Island and ditched at sea. It fits the timeline, and the radio signals make sense, but no wreckage has ever been found. Then there's Nikumaroro, the idea that she reached the reef, sent out distress calls for several days, and died waiting for rescue. The bones, the aluminum sheet, and now the Taria object all support that version. But until metal is confirmed, it remains an open question. And finally, the Saipan theory, that she flew farther north, was captured by Japanese forces, and died in custody. Locals have long told stories of a woman pilot and a tall man with light hair held on the island in 1937. The details are haunting, but no physical proof has ever surfaced. For years, those stories were dismissed as legend. But soon, newly declassified Navy and intelligence files may let researchers compare those claims to what the US government actually recorded at the time. Historians are waiting for the White House to release all government records related to Earhart's disappearance. Among the papers already confirmed is a 1967 Air Force report that reviewed Navy files. It concluded Earhart wasn't on a spy mission and hadn't been captured. Yet strangely, the document was stamped confidential and locked away for 60 years. Why hide a denial? Old Navy logs mention something else too, a mysterious radio intercept. On July 3, 1937, one day after she vanished, operators in Guam and Manila picked up a weak female voice calling on 3105 kHz, the same daytime frequency Earhart used. The signal was faint, fading in and out, but it repeated several times before disappearing. Triangulation placed it north of Howland, near the Marshall Islands, a region under Japanese control at the time. If those readings were real, it means she was alive, drifting north, trying to make contact. If they weren't, it's another coincidence, the kind this mystery seems to attract. Each theory answers some questions and leaves others hanging. The crash and sink theory fits the physics. Nikumaroro fits the evidence. Saipan fits the folklore. And maybe that's why the story has never gone cold, because every generation finds the version that feels closest to truth. This year, the search comes full circle. One team digging through declassified files, another through coral and sand, both chasing the same question. What really happened to Amelia Earhart? Amelia Earhart's story has never just been about flight. It's about what happens when you push past the edge of what's known. And sometimes, you don't come back. By the time she set out to circle the world, she'd already broken records, inspired millions, and become one of the most famous people on Earth. But this last journey wasn't about fame. It was about finishing what she started, proving that the boundaries of her time could be redrawn. Nearly 90 years later, we still don't know how her story ended. Maybe she crashed at sea. Maybe she reached that lonely atoll and waited for help that never came. Or maybe the truth lies somewhere in between, part fact, part myth, and entirely human. She was famous before she vanished. Now she's a legend. And as another expedition heads toward that same stretch of Pacific, one question remains. After all this time, will we finally learn how the legend ends? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to follow what happens next when the Nikumaroro results are released, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I'd love to hear what you think. Simple crash at sea or something more? Drop your thoughts below, and let's see where the evidence takes us.